Hi, my name is Leah Day, and welcome to this video for the Building Blocks Quilt Along. We're on our second quilting design for our disappearing 9-patch block, and this time we're going to be tackling circles and spirals. Both of these things can be a little challenging, but we're going to have lots of fun stitching it out and learn a few maybe time-saving tips along the way. So let's get started. So here I am on the block, and the first kind of time-saving tip I want to give you about this block, we have all of these tiny half-inch circles through this area. They go through this kind of little narrow spot and then fill in this little area too. And so one way you can save time on this block is, instead of marking circles, mark yourself a grid. And this is going to really properly place your circles, and you can then stitch these basically freehand without the marks. You're going to use these squares as a guideline. I can flow my circle just stitching it around within that space, knowing, that circle edge needs to hit the top and sides and bottom of that space. You can even mark the center point of it. But we'll get to circles in just a little while. Right now, we need to knock out our stitching in the ditch, and we've also got these straight line spirals. And so I'm kind of looking at how I can stitch this in the ditch and knock out a good number of these spirals at the same time. So that's what I'm going to get started with. I'm going to be stitching straight down this ditch. And I'm coming up on a spiral and a little square. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch right in there and fill it in as I go. So I'm going to stitch down to that line. And now I'm just going to flow into the spiral. Stitching in, and this is a closed spiral. I would advise marking this because of all the straight lines and sharp angles, and because you really want to be able to get yourself some space in and leave some space to get back out again. It can be a little tricky to visualize that when you're first getting started. There we go. So that's a pretty spiral all knocked out. And we're back on our line that we're stitching in the ditch, so we can just stitch on down. And we're about to hit another one of those spirals, so let me flow through that too while we're at it. Okay, so I'm right here, and I'm ready to stitch a circle into this spot. I'm going to zoom in real good so that you can see this. I basically got a square area, and I want to kind of guesstimate the center point. I'm not going to take my ruler to it. I'm just kind of visualizing that center point right there. And now I'm going to swing around to fill this space with the circle. Okay. Now I'm going to stitch down along the edge of that circle, and I'm going to stitch the next circle. And you might want to rotate so that you can kind of see this at a different angle. It really just depends on what feels best for you. This is feeling better to me. If you need that center spot marked, by all means mark it. Marking the straight lines definitely saved me a lot of time. I found also I was able to get a little bit better placement. I was having a little trouble with my circle template marking as accurately, so that might be something that helps you out too. Now if you make a mistake and you stitch off, like I just kind of took a little bite at it as I was travel stitching, that's okay. If you ever get really worried about it and you're like, oh, it's so bad, it doesn't look good, well, just go inside of it and fill it with a little spiral. Just something like that. And everybody will see it and go, oh, what a nice addition, that's so cute. And they will never know that you were trying to hide a mistake while you did it. So keep that in mind. Don't get too hard on yourself with this. Even I make mistakes. I get distracted. And these circles are freehand so that they're not going to be perfect. They're, we're aiming to get them consistent size and a consistent shape, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the way it's going to end up. Okay. So we've knocked out to there, and I need to kind of reevaluate again. What do I want to knock out next? I could continue to fill in these circles. I've also got this handy dandy spiral right here. I could knock that out too. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I've got some ditches I can hit. Let's see here. How can I knock out these ditches in the most logical way? Let me think through this out loud. I think I'm going to stitch maybe over and hit that corner, come down to here, I'll end up travel stitching that line. That's not a big deal. And then I can ditch this and go on ahead and knock out this big spiral here. I'll end up back here, ditch back up, and then I can knock out that spiral and I'll end up back over here and I can finish up my circles. So hopefully you were able to see, by the time I get this whole thing done, I'm going to basically have this whole section minus these circles done, which will be great. I'm always looking at ways that I can knock out a good amount in a logical way and end up where I want to be at the end. And also have the least amount of travel stitching. We're going to have a little bit, but it's really nice if we can minimize it. And here I'm travel stitching as I stitch in the ditch. I'm trying to stay right on that line, even if I popped out of the ditch a little bit. Okay, and now I'm going to stitch in the ditch very carefully because this is black fabric, two pieces of black fabric pieced together, and I can barely see that ditch. Okay, time to take out that pin and knock out this big square. The nice thing about this is this block is symmetrical, so if this worked on one half, chances are it's going to work on the other half. This block is only side-by-side symmetrical, two-way symmetrical. It doesn't have four corners the way some of our blocks, like our 4-patch, was like, so I can't just wash and repeat the same thing over and over again 4 times. I'm only going to do this twice. Hope that makes sense. Most quilt blocks are symmetrical at least one way, if not 2 ways, horizontal and vertical. Just something about the design. Okay. Alright, so I'm still kind of missing all these stitches through here, but I think I'll wait on those and just continue with my plan. Sometimes I can bite off, well, I kind of go back and forth. If I went on ahead and knocked this out, got to here, and stitched down to this corner, I could fill circles in all the way back, circles in up here, circle, 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 and get back here, and then knock back out and get back here. And that would be half the block knocked out. I think I will do that. Sorry if this is confusing, but this is a very complicated block. I started, adding more designs to these blocks as we got further into the project. And sometimes the quilting will not be linear, will not be exactly linear, and that's okay. Sometimes you have to do a little bit of bouncing around in order to get it filled in completely. So I'm going to speed up the video at this point and let you see me flow through this area. So you can see that there's definitely 2 different ways to make your circles. I love how this really kind of puffs up the texture of the block. I think it really emphasizes the piecing design of this block. It's really interesting. It's a dynamic design on top of an already interesting piecing design. So I think it's definitely fun to play with. Do understand though that circles, especially this small, are going to be a challenge no matter whether you mark every single one and have them exactly right, or you stitch them freehand with no marking at all, or just assisted marking with just the grid lines to kind of give you a guideline for where they go. As for flowing through the block, you saw how I stopped and planned. out loud, and that's a good idea. Figuring out how you're going to flow through it with the least amount of travel stitching is something you're going to have to do on a block by block basis. And as these blocks get more complex, definitely take your time, sit down with your quilting guide and spend some time tracing it, because sometimes when you get it on the machine it can be really confusing as to where to go next, but if you've already gotten familiar with it on the quilting guide, this is going to be a lot easier. So that's it for this block. I really hope that you enjoyed learning our circles and spirals in this disappearing 9-patch block. It was on the intense side, and this did take me about 30 minutes to stitch out completely, and that's fairly time consuming, so you want to kind of budget your time and make sure that you have the opportunity to sit down and relax as you stitch this. Remember to breathe as you stitch these circles. I know it can just really be one of those things that we want to stitch perfectly and accurately and exactly, but I hope I showed you enough today that that even wasn't happening for me. So my name is Leah Day, and this has been a video for the Building Blocks Quilt Along. Pick up your copy of the Building Blocks quilt pattern and join us as we learn how to piece and free motion quilt 21 beautiful blocks together. You can find that pattern at leahday.com. Until next time, let's go quilt.